The maintenance alert chimed for the third time in 10 minutes, and Instructor Vex was beginning to suspect that today's training session would end badly. The Galactic Combat Academy's primary sparring facility had seen plenty of accidents over the years. Broken bones, minor concussions, the occasional species-specific poisoning incident, but nothing quite like what was about to unfold. "Systems nominal," reported the facility's AI in its perpetually cheerful tone. "All safety protocols active. Medical bay standing by." Vex adjusted his ceremonial combat armor and surveyed the assembled cadets with practiced authority. Representatives from 17 different species stood in formation, each one hand-picked for their potential as elite warriors. Towering Krillian shock troops with their razor-sharp carapaces. Swift Talaxian hunters whose reflexes could track plasma bolts in flight. Even a few of the notoriously aggressive Borth combat specialists, whose idea of light sparring typically involved someone losing consciousness. And then there was the human. Jake Rodriguez stood near the back of the group, looking completely out of place among the galaxy's most formidable predator species. At roughly average height for his kind, with the soft features and apparent lack of natural weapons that characterized his species, he seemed about as threatening as a maintenance drone. His casual demeanor and tendency to ask questions like, is there a weight room around here?" had initially convinced Vex that some kind of administrative error had occurred. The human had arrived 3 weeks ago as part of some diplomatic exchange program that Vex still didn't fully understand. Something about cultural learning opportunities and interspecies cooperation initiatives. The paperwork had been processed by beings far above Vex's pay grade, which meant he was stuck trying to integrate a species known primarily for their diplomatic skills into a facility designed to produce the galaxy's deadliest warriors. So far, the integration had been interesting. Jake had spent his first week asking questions about everything, from the cafeteria's protein content to whether the academy had any pick-up basketball games. Most of his inquiries made no sense when translated, leading to lengthy consultations with xenolinguistic specialists who seemed equally baffled by human recreational terminology. "Today," Vex announced, his voice carrying across the training chamber, "we will be observing interspecies combat techniques. Each of you will demonstrate the fighting styles native to your homeworld." The Krillian cadets clicked their mandibles in anticipation. The Talaxians began the ritual stretching sequences that prepared their hypermobile joints for combat. The Borth simply cracked their knuckles, which sounded disturbingly like small bones breaking. Jake raised his hand. "Hey, instructor, when you say demonstrate, do you mean like show the moves, or actually spar with someone?" "Demonstration only," Vex replied firmly. "We are here to observe technique, not to create casualties." Cool. So like shadowboxing type deal?" Vex had no idea what shadowboxing meant, but he nodded anyway. Human terminology was notoriously difficult to parse, filled with references to activities that made no apparent sense when translated. The species seemed to have developed language specifically to confuse other life forms. The demonstrations began smoothly enough. Cadet Rex 7 of the Krillian Dominion performed a series of strikes that could theoretically pierce starship hull plating. The movements were precise, economical, and absolutely lethal. Vex made appropriate notes on his datapad, documenting the efficiency of Krillian combat doctrine for the Academy's archives. Each strike was calculated for maximum damage with minimal energy expenditure. The Krillian fighting style had evolved over millennia of warfare, refined through countless battles into something approaching mathematical perfection. Watch a Krillian warrior in action, and you were witnessing the culmination of an entire civilization's dedication to the art of controlled violence. Cadet Tease displayed Talaxian flow fighting, a martial art based on redirecting an opponent's energy through seemingly impossible joint movements. Her limbs bent at angles that would have hospitalized most species, creating attack patterns that resembled some kind of beautiful, deadly dance. The Talaxian approach emphasized adaptability and evasion, turning an opponent's strength against them through precise timing and anatomical advantages that bordered on the supernatural. The Bort representative, Cadet Krusk, demonstrated their species' preferred method of conflict resolution. Overwhelming brute force applied with surgical precision. Bort combat training was less about technique and more about maximizing the destructive potential of their naturally enhanced physiology. Where other species developed complex martial arts, The Bort simply perfected the art of hitting things very, very hard. Each demonstration followed the same pattern: ceremonial preparation, formal stance adoption, technique execution, and respectful acknowledgement from the observing cadets. It was civilized, educational, and utterly predictable. When Jake's turn arrived, he stepped forward with the casual confidence of someone heading to a casual workout. "Sir, I should probably mention," he said, rolling his shoulders in a way that produced small popping sounds. "I'm not really trained in any specific martial art or anything. I just kind of, wing it." "Win it?" Vex inquired, making a note to consult the translation database later. "Yeah, like improvise, figure it out as I go. Most humans do that, actually. We're not really big on formal combat training, unless we're like professional soldiers or whatever." This was concerning news. Vex had been under the impression that all species worthy of galactic citizenship possessed some form of structured combat doctrine. The idea that humans simply improvised their way through violent encounters seemed to suggest either remarkable adaptability or complete tactical incompetence. "Perhaps you could demonstrate some basic self-defense techniques," Vex suggested. "Sure thing. Do you want me to use a training dummy, or?" The training dummies were constructed from reinforced polymer compounds designed to withstand strikes from the Academy's strongest cadets. They had been tested against Krillian claws, Bort fists, and even the plasma-enhanced attacks of the more exotic warrior species. According to the specifications, they were virtually indestructible under normal training conditions. Before Vex could respond, Cadet Zeth-9 stepped forward. The Krillian was easily the most formidable student in the Academy, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with natural armor plating that could deflect energy weapons and claws capable of rending metal. More importantly, Zeth-9 had never lost a sparring match, never shown mercy to a defeated opponent, and never encountered a challenge he couldn't overcome through sheer physical dominance. Zeth-9 was what the Academy called a generational talent, the kind of warrior who appeared once every few decades and redefined what was considered possible in combat. His reflexes tested at the upper limits of Krillian physiology. His tactical assessment scores consistently broke Academy records. Most importantly, he possessed the kind of controlled aggression that made him equally effective against multiple opponent types. "I volunteer," Zeth-9 announced, his translated voice carrying the kind of confidence that came from knowing you were apex predator material. "I am curious to observe human combat technique." The training chamber fell silent. Several cadets took instinctive steps backward. Even the Borth, who considered violence a form of recreational activity, looked nervous. Zeth-9's sparring sessions were legendary among the student body, primarily because they tended to end with his opponents requiring extensive medical attention. "That's not necessary," Vex said quickly. "Perhaps we should use the standard training equipment." "No, it's cool," Jake interrupted, already stretching his arms across his chest. "I could use a good workout. Been sitting in lectures all morning." Vex felt his primary stomach begin to develop what humans called an ulcer. The safety protocols were clear. Interspecies sparring was prohibited except under the most controlled circumstances, with full medical teams standing by and emergency containment fields active. This was exactly the kind of situation that led to diplomatic incidents, insurance claims, and very uncomfortable conversations with Academy leadership. Furthermore, there was the matter of the significant physiological differences between the species involved. Krillians were natural apex predators, with built-in weapons and armor. Humans were, well, the xenobiological classification for humans was still being debated, but apex predator definitely wasn't among the leading theories. The safety regulations clearly state, "Oh, we're not gonna hurt each other," Jake said with a laugh. "It's just sparring, right? Like light contact, maybe work on some grappling techniques, nothing serious." Zeth-9's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Indeed, nothing serious. The way he said it made Vex suspect that the Krillian's definition of nothing serious might differ significantly from established Academy standards. In Krillian culture, light sparring typically meant that only minor bones would be broken and organ damage would be kept to a minimum. "I really must insist that we follow proper protocol." "Relax, instructor," Jake said, bouncing on his toes in what appeared to be some kind of warm-up routine. "What's the worst that could happen?" This question, Vex would later reflect, should have been treated as a formal request for risk assessment rather than rhetorical inquiry. In his 40-year career training the galaxy's most dangerous warriors, he had learned that the phrase, "What's the worst that could happen?" typically preceded events that required extensive paperwork and trauma counseling. The other cadets formed a loose circle around the designated sparring area, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed horror. Medical sensors automatically activated, monitoring both participants for signs of distress. Emergency containment fields hummed to life on standby. The Academy's AI began recording everything for later analysis, as per standard protocol. Jake finished his stretching routine and faced his opponent with casual confidence. Zeth-9 assumed a traditional Krillian combat stance. Low center of gravity, claws extended, natural armor plates shifted for optimal protection. The contrast was almost comical. The galaxy's most feared warrior species prepared for battle, while the human looked like he was getting ready for recreational exercise. "Standard sparring rules?" Jake asked. "Standard rules," Zeth-9 confirmed. Vex opened his mouth to clarify exactly what standard rules meant when dealing with different species, different gravity preferences, and significantly different durability ratings. But before he could speak, Jake moved. What happened next would require extensive analysis by multiple xenobiological research teams, violate several established principles of physics, and become the most studied 7 seconds of footage in galactic military history. 4:10. Jake didn't attack with any recognizable martial arts technique. He didn't employ the precision strikes of advanced combat training or the calculated movements of professional warriors. Instead, he did something that no one in the facility, including the Academy's comprehensive tactical database, had anticipated. He improvised. The impact resonated through the training chamber like a small seismic event. Zeth-9 had been bred for war in the most literal sense possible. The Krillian Empire didn't produce warriors through training programs or military academies. They engineered them through selective genetics, enhanced nutrition protocols, and combat conditioning that began before birth. His genetic lineage could be traced back through 17 generations of undefeated champions, each one carefully selected for traits that would produce the perfect killing machine. His carapace bore the ritual scarification marks of 43 confirmed kills in formal combat. His claws had been honed on the bones of defeated enemies, following traditions that predated interstellar travel. Most significantly, his neural pathways had been chemically optimized for tactical analysis, allowing him to process combat variables at speeds that approached computer-level efficiency. In the 3 years since arriving at the Galactic Combat Academy, Zeth-9 had established a reputation that bordered on mythological. Sparring partners were selected through a careful psychological evaluation process, because standard cadets tended to develop lasting trauma after facing him in combat. The Academy had implemented special protocols requiring counseling sessions before and after any training exercise involving Z9, along with mandatory stress leave for anyone who lasted more than 30 seconds against him. His record was perfect. Not just undefeated, perfect. No opponent had ever managed to land a meaningful strike. No tactical approach had ever caught him off guard. No species-specific advantage had ever proved sufficient to overcome his combination of speed, strength, and tactical superiority. The closest anyone had come to challenging him was Cadet Thrix, a Borth heavy assault specialist whose punch could theoretically crack starship armor plating. Zeth-9 had ended that sparring match by dislocating 14 of Thrix's joints in rapid succession, then pinning him with one claw while explaining the tactical errors that had led to his defeat. The psychological evaluation reports noted that Thrix still refused to enter rooms containing Krillians. It seemed that Thrix still refused to enter rooms containing Krillian. More concerning, from an institutional perspective, was Zeth-9's complete inability to comprehend the concept of holding back. Krillian military doctrine recognized only total victory or honorable death. The idea of deliberately limiting one's combat effectiveness for training purposes violated fundamental principles of warrior culture. Previous attempts to explain light sparring had resulted in increasingly frustrated lectures about proper combat philosophy and the importance of establishing dominance hierarchies. The Academy's medical staff had developed specific treatment protocols for Zeth-9 encounters, which typically involved rapid stabilization of multiple fractures, emergency surgery for internal bleeding, and psychological counseling for trauma, stress disorders. The betting pools among maintenance staff had evolved from "how long will the opponent last" to "how many bones will require surgical reconstruction." What made Zeth-9 particularly formidable wasn't just his physical capabilities, it was his analytical approach to combat. He studied each opponent's species-specific vulnerabilities, identified their preferred fighting styles, and developed countermeasures that exploited every possible weakness. His preparation for sparring sessions resembled military intelligence operations more than athletic training, which made Jake's casual approach to the situation particularly problematic. The human was treating the encounter like some kind of recreational activity. He'd removed his academy jacket and was performing what appeared to be a series of random movements designed to loosen up. His comments about getting a good workout suggested he fundamentally misunderstood the nature of Krillian combat methodology. "You understand," Zeth-9 said, his translated voice carrying the formal tone reserved for pre-combat declarations, "that Krillian sparring traditions do not include mercy protocols." Jake paused in his stretching routine. "Mercy protocols? We fight until one participant can no longer continue. Submission is achieved through incapacitation or acknowledgement of tactical superiority." "Oh." Jake considered this for a moment. "Yeah, that's not really how we do things on Earth. How do humans conduct combat training?" "Well, we try not to actually hurt each other. The goal is to practice techniques and improve skills, not to put people in the hospital." Zeth-9's mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion. "How does one establish dominance without demonstrating superior capability through victory?" "We don't really worry about dominance. It's more about, getting better at stuff." This response violated so many fundamental principles of Corellian psychology that Zeth-9 required several seconds to process it. Combat without dominance establishment was like mathematics without numbers, a conceptual impossibility that challenged basic understanding of how the universe functioned. The concept was so alien to Krillian thinking that it triggered what their psychologists called cognitive displacement syndrome, a temporary inability to process information that contradicted core behavioral programming. For a warrior species that had built their entire civilization around the principle of strength-based hierarchy, the idea of combat as recreational improvement rather than dominance assertion was literally incomprehensible. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should establish parameters that accommodate both cultural approaches." Jake brightened. "Sure. How about we just go until someone taps out or says stop?" "Acceptable." Zeth-9 assumed his combat stance. "I will attempt to minimize permanent damage." The promise was intended as a courtesy, but Jake seemed to find it amusing rather than reassuring. He settled into what looked less like a fighting stance and more like someone getting ready to perform manual labor. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic wing of the Academy, Ambassador Urix of the Krillian Empire was discovering that the peace conference he'd spent 6 months organizing was about to be derailed by events occurring 3 levels below in the training facility. The conference represented the culmination of delicate negotiations between 17 different species, each with territorial disputes, trade disagreements, and cultural conflicts that threatened to destabilize the entire sector. Months of careful diplomacy had finally produced agreements on everything from shipping routes to colony rights, with signing ceremonies scheduled to begin within the hour. The delegates had already begun arriving, their shuttles forming an impressive display of interspecies cooperation in the Academy's landing base. Representatives from the Talaxian Federation had brought ceremonial gifts that required special atmospheric containment. The Borth delegation had agreed to limit their entourage to non-combat personnel, which represented a significant diplomatic concession. Even the notoriously reclusive Sith Rene had sent observers, marking the first time in decades they'd participated in multi-species negotiations. Ambassador Yix had specifically chosen the Combat Academy as a neutral venue, reasoning that a facility dedicated to training would project an image of strength without favoring any particular faction. The symbolism was supposed to represent controlled power in service of peace. Warriors learning discipline rather than destruction. The irony was not lost on him that his careful venue selection was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible. He was reviewing the final treaty documents when his aide burst into the preparation chamber with the kind of panicked expression typically reserved for natural disasters. "Sir, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Yurix asked, though his experience suggested he didn't want to know the answer. "The human representatives is about to engage in combat with the human exchange cadet." Yurix felt his digestive systems perform what humans called a flip. The Human Exchange Program was a diplomatic initiative of the highest importance, designed to demonstrate Krillian commitment to interspecies cooperation. Any incident involving the human would require explanations to multiple governments, extensive paperwork, and very uncomfortable conversations with beings who controlled military budgets. "Stop them immediately." "Sir, the sparring session has already begun." "Then end it." "Sir, it's Cadet Z9. Yurix's aide delivered this information with the tone usually reserved for announcing terminal diagnoses. Everyone in the diplomatic corps knew about Z9. His reputation had become a recurring problem in interspecies relations because other civilizations tended to interpret his existence as a not-so-subtle threat about Krillian military capabilities. Several trade negotiations had stalled when opposing delegations learned that the Krillian Empire was producing warriors of Zeth9's caliber. Military intelligence services throughout the galaxy maintained detailed files on his capabilities, treating him as a strategic asset rather than a student. His very existence at the Academy served as a reminder that the Krillians remained the most formidable military force in known space. "How long ago did it start?" "Approximately 30 seconds, sir." Yurix was already moving toward the communication panel. "Contact the medical bay. Full trauma team activation. Contact facility security. Prepare emergency containment protocols. Contact my personal physician and tell him to clear his schedule." "Sir, should I postpone the peace conference?" "Postpone it? If that human gets seriously injured by our most dangerous cadet during a diplomatic function, we won't need a peace conference. We'll need a war crimes tribunal." The implications were staggering. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community, and their integration had been proceeding smoothly despite initial skepticism about their military capabilities. A diplomatic incident involving serious injury to their exchange student would not only damage Krillian reputation, but could potentially destabilize the entire peace process. Back in the training facility, Jake had discovered that Krillian combat techniques were significantly more intense than anything he'd previously experienced. Zeth9 moved with the fluid precision of a natural predator, each strike calculated for maximum efficiency and devastating impact. His claws left gouges in the reinforced flooring. His movements generated small sonic booms as he exceeded the facility's recommended speed limits. The training chamber's environmental systems were struggling to compensate for the energy being released by the combat. Atmospheric processors worked overtime to clear the air of debris kicked up by impacts. Temperature regulators fought to maintain optimal conditions as the participants' exertions generated heat signatures that registered as potential fire hazards. What made the situation particularly surreal was Jake's response to this overwhelming display of deadly competence. He was improvising, not in the way military strategists understood improvisation, the rapid adaptation of proven techniques to unexpected circumstances. Jake was literally making things up as he went along, combining movements that appeared to be drawn from activities that had nothing to do with combat. His footwork resembled some kind of dance. His hand movements looked like he was performing manual labor. His overall approach suggested someone who had learned to fight by watching recreational activities and misunderstanding their purpose. But somehow, impossibly, it was working. Zeth9's first attack, a perfectly executed claw strike that should have ended the match instantly, encountered a human who wasn't where he was supposed to be. His follow-up combination, designed to exploit the opening created by the first attack, found empty air as Jake moved in a pattern that violated basic tactical principles. The Krillians' combat algorithms, honed through years of training and genetic optimization, were encountering something they couldn't process, an opponent who didn't follow any recognizable fighting doctrine. Every species in the galactic community had developed martial arts based on logical principles. Leverage physics, anatomical advantages, and tactical efficiency. Jake appeared to be operating according to principles that existed only in his own mind. Most disturbing was Jake's apparent attitude toward the encounter. While Zeth-9 was executing combat maneuvers that represented centuries of military evolution, Jake seemed to be treating the situation like some kind of vigorous exercise routine. "Nice moves," Jake called out, while somehow avoiding a strike that could have decapitated most species. "You guys must have some serious training programs." Zeth-9's response was to increase the intensity of his attacks, reasoning that Jake's evasive success was the result of insufficient pressure. This decision led to a rapid escalation that pushed both participants beyond the facility's safety parameters. The training chamber's AI began registering impact readings that exceeded its measurement capabilities. Structural stress monitors detected vibrations that suggested possible foundation damage. Most concerning, the psychological evaluation sensors indicated that one participant was experiencing combat stress levels consistent with life or death scenarios, while the other participant appeared to be enjoying himself. Jake's fighting style, such as it was, seemed to involve hitting things with whatever part of his body happened to be convenient at the moment. He used his fists, elbows, knees, feet, and occasionally his head, apparently without regard for the traditional concepts of technique, form, or self-preservation. His attacks lacked the precision of trained martial arts, the efficiency of military combat systems, or the calculated brutality of predator species. Instead, he simply hit things very, very hard, very, very often, and with a level of enthusiasm that suggested he found the entire experience genuinely entertaining. The other cadets watched in horrified fascination as their understanding of combat methodology was systematically demolished by someone who appeared to be making it up as he went along. The Academy's medical bay had been designed to handle the most severe combat injuries imaginable. Built to accommodate 17 different species with varying physiologies, atmospheric requirements, and medical protocols, it represented the pinnacle of multi-species emergency care. The facility could simultaneously treat plasma burns, gravitational displacement syndrome, and quantum-level cellular disruption while maintaining perfect environmental conditions for beings who breathed everything from methane to liquid nitrogen. What it had never been designed to handle was a Code Extinction Event, triggered by what was supposed to be a routine training demonstration. Dr. Rilth, the Academy's chief medical officer, was reviewing routine diagnostic reports when the first alarm began wailing. A steady, rhythmic pulse that indicated elevated stress readings from the training facility. Nothing unusual there. Combat training regularly produced physiological spikes that triggered the monitoring systems. The second alarm joined the first 30 seconds later. This one was higher-pitched, indicating potential injury protocols needed activation. Still manageable. Dr. Rilth had treated everything from accidentally severed limbs to species-specific allergic reactions triggered by cross-contamination during mixed training sessions. When the third alarm started screaming, Dr. Rilth knew something had gone catastrophically wrong. Code Extinction Event Level 1. All trauma teams to emergency stations. Code Extinction Event Level 1. The announcement echoed through the medical bay with the kind of clinical urgency reserved for situations that threatened the complete structural integrity of the facility. In 40 years of practice, Dr. Rilth had never heard those words spoken outside of disaster preparedness drills. "What's the nature of the emergency?" she demanded, racing toward the trauma center while pulling on emergency protective gear. "Unknown, doctor," replied her chief nurse, a Sithrani whose multiple manipulator appendages were already configuring emergency equipment. The training facility's structural integrity monitors are registering impacts that exceed our measurement parameters. Impacts from what? 2 participants in a sparring match. Dr. Rilth stopped moving. 2 participants? Confirmed. Cadet Zeth-9 and the human exchange student. The medical bay fell silent except for the continued wailing of alarms. Every member of the medical staff understood the implications. Zeth-9's sparring sessions typically required extensive trauma care for his opponents. A Code Extinction Event suggested something far beyond their normal treatment protocols. "How long has the engagement been active?" "Approximately 4 minutes, doctor." 4 minutes was an eternity in combat between trained warriors. Most sparring matches involving Zeth-9 ended within 30 seconds, either through immediate incapacitation of his opponent or tactical surrender. The fact that combat was continuing suggested either unprecedented resistance or complete breakdown of safety protocols. "Are containment fields active?" "Negative, doctor." The participants exceeded containment parameters approximately 90 seconds ago. Dr. Rilth felt her respiratory systems perform what humans called hyperventilation. Containment fields were designed to withstand direct hits from military-grade weaponry. The idea that two individuals engaged in sparring could exceed those parameters was like suggesting that casual conversation could shatter reinforced glass. Current participant status: unknown. Biometric readings are inconsistent with known physiological parameters. Explain. Doctor, the human's vital signs suggest he's engaged in moderate recreational exercise. His heart rate is elevated but within normal ranges for physical activity. Respiratory function is consistent with someone performing manual labor. And ZETH-9, stress indicators suggest he's fighting for his life. The trauma team assembled with the efficiency of beings trained for the worst possible scenarios. Emergency surgical equipment configured for both Kryllian and human physiology. Atmospheric containment units prepared for potential toxic exposure. Molecular-level reconstruction technology activated for catastrophic tissue damage. Estimated arrival time for casualties? Doctor, that's unclear. Unclear how. The engagement appears to be ongoing. Dr. Rilth had treated combat injuries for 4 decades. She'd seen the aftermath of interspecies warfare, industrial accidents involving antimatter containment failures, and training exercises gone wrong in ways that violated multiple laws of physics. But she'd never encountered a situation where the medical bay was standing ready for casualties from a fight that was still happening after 4 minutes. Are we receiving live feeds from the training facility? Negative, Doctor. Visual recording equipment was damaged during the first minute of engagement. The implications were staggering. The training facility's recording systems were built to withstand anything short of direct orbital bombardment. They were designed to document combat techniques for analysis, meaning they had to remain functional under the most extreme conditions imaginable. What about indirect monitoring? Seismic sensors indicate ongoing structural impact. Atmospheric displacement suggests rapid movement of large masses. Temperature readings are unprecedented. How unprecedented? Doctor, the training chamber's environmental systems are registering heat signatures consistent with industrial metalworking operations. Dr. Rilth's medical training had included courses on exotic injury types, damage caused by exposure to stellar radiation, gravitational anomalies, and quantum-level disruption. But nothing in her education had prepared her for casualties resulting from sparring sessions that generated metalworking-level temperatures. Meanwhile, in the Academy's administrative wing, 3 separate species AI representatives were simultaneously demanding emergency evacuation protocols. The Talaxian delegation, known for their diplomatic composure, had requested immediate transport off-world after their seismic sensors detected what they interpreted as preliminary signs of catastrophic facility collapse. Their evacuation request cited unprecedented geological instability and potential threat to delegation safety. The Borth military attaché, whose species considered violence a recreational activity, had formally requested emergency extraction after reviewing preliminary sensor data. His official report noted that the ongoing combat exceeded Borth military standards for acceptable training intensity, and recommended immediate diplomatic distancing from whatever was happening in the training facility. Most concerning was the request from the Sithrani observers, whose species had never requested emergency evacuation from anything. The Sithrani had survived 3 separate extinction-level events on their homeworld and considered physical danger a routine aspect of existence. Their evacuation request simply stated, "Recommend immediate departure. Situation exceeds parameters for rational analysis." Ambassador Yex found himself managing a diplomatic crisis that was expanding exponentially. The peace conference delegates, who had gathered to sign carefully negotiated treaties, were instead demanding explanations for why their meeting venue was apparently undergoing controlled demolition. "Ambassador," his aide reported, with the strained composure of someone delivering news that would end careers, "we're receiving inquiries from 17 different military commands, requesting clarification about the nature of combat activities currently taking place at this facility." "What kind of inquiries?" "Sir, they want to know if we're testing new weapons systems." The evacuation requests had triggered automatic alerts to military intelligence services throughout the galaxy. when 3 different species simultaneously requested emergency extraction from a diplomatic venue, it typically indicated either terrorist activities or the deployment of weapons of mass destruction. Are we testing new weapons systems? No, sir, it's still just the sparring match. The sparring match is causing evacuation requests. Yes, sir. Ambassador Yedix reviewed the timeline. 7 minutes ago, he'd been preparing for a routine peace conference. Now he was fielding questions about weapons testing, managing evacuation requests from species known for their courage under fire, and trying to explain why his academy's medical bay had declared a Code Extinction Event over what was supposed to be a friendly training exercise. Back in the medical bay, Dr. Rilth was receiving reports that challenged her understanding of how physical reality functioned. Doctor, we're getting audio feeds from the training facility. What kind of audio? Sir, someone is laughing. Dr. Rilth felt her diagnostic equipment register stress indicators that exceeded her species' normal parameters. Who's laughing? Based on vocal pattern analysis, it's the human. The human is laughing. Yes, doctor. He appears to be enjoying himself. The concept was so absurd that Dr. Wilt required several seconds to process it. Z9 was the most dangerous individual in the Academy, capable of lethal force that could incapacitate most species instantly. A sparring match with him should produce terror, pain, or the quick unconsciousness of merciful defeat. Laughter suggested either complete psychological breakdown or something far more disturbing. Are we getting any verbal communication from the engagement? Yes, doctor. The human appears to be providing commentary. Commentary? He's making observations about Kryllian fighting techniques and asking questions about training methods. Dr. Rilth's medical training had included psychology courses covering combat stress, trauma responses, and species-specific reactions to mortal danger. Humans were supposed to experience fear, adrenaline responses, and fight-or-flight reactions like most sentient species. Providing educational commentary during life-threatening combat suggested either remarkable psychological resilience or complete disconnection from reality. What's the current duration of engagement? 8 minutes and counting, Doctor. 8 minutes of continuous combat between Zeth-9 and anyone was unprecedented. The longest previous engagement in Academy history had lasted 47 seconds, and that opponent had required 6 months of reconstructive surgery, followed by psychological counseling for trauma disorders. Are we getting any communication from Cadet Zeth-9? Negative, Doctor. His vocalizations are inconsistent with standard Kryllian combat communications, meaning, Doctor, he appears to be confused. The medical bay's trauma team had assembled the most advanced emergency care equipment in known space. Surgical systems capable of repairing damage at the molecular level. Life support technology that could maintain biological functions even after catastrophic injury. Psychological counseling protocols designed to address trauma from experiences that challenged fundamental understanding of reality. What they hadn't prepared for was treating casualties from a sparring match where one participant was having the time of his life, while the other was questioning everything he'd ever believed about combat. When the engagement finally ended, after 11 minutes and 37 seconds of continuous combat, Dr. Rilth's team was ready for anything except what actually walked through the medical bay doors. Jake Rodriguez entered the facility with the casual confidence of someone finishing a routine workout. His academy uniform was torn in several places and covered with what appeared to be debris from the training chamber's damaged infrastructure. His hair was disheveled, and he had a few minor cuts that would require basic treatment. Otherwise, he looked like someone who'd spent an hour at a recreational fitness facility. "Hey, Doc," he said with a cheerful wave. "Got anything for these scratches? Also, do you know if the cafeteria is still open? I worked up quite an appetite." Behind him, a medical transport team wheeled in Cadet Zeth-9 on a specialized gurney designed for Kryllian physiology. The most dangerous warrior in the academy was conscious, but appeared to be experiencing what psychologists called existential displacement syndrome, a condition that occurred when fundamental beliefs about reality were challenged beyond acceptable parameters. "What happened?" Dr. Rilth asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Oh, we had a great sparring session," Jake replied, examining a small cut on his forearm. "Zeth's got some really impressive techniques. I learned a lot." "And Cadet Zeth-9's condition?" Hun seemed a little overwhelmed toward the end. "I think maybe we went a bit harder than he's used to." Dr. Rilth looked at the most feared warrior in the galaxy, who was staring at the ceiling with the expression of someone trying to reconcile irreconcilable information. "Did you win the sparring match?" she asked. Jake looked genuinely confused by the question. "Win? It wasn't really about winning. We were just working out." While the medical team worked to treat what they were classifying as comprehensive paradigm displacement, the Academy's security systems were automatically uploading footage of the engagement to the Galactic Military Education Network. Within 6 hours, every combat training facility in known space was studying 11 minutes and 37 seconds of footage that challenged fundamental assumptions about warfare, training methodology, and the nature of human physical capabilities. The footage showed Cadet Zeth-9, the most feared warrior of his generation, engaged in what appeared to be desperate combat against an opponent who treated the encounter like recreational exercise. Military analysts would spend years studying Jake's techniques, trying to understand how someone with no formal training had managed to not only survive an encounter with Zeth-9, but apparently enjoy the experience. What happened next made galactic history, and not in a good way. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 48 hours after what historians would later classify as the Rodriguez incident. Representatives from 47 species had gathered in the Council's primary assembly chamber, a massive spherical structure designed to accommodate the diverse environmental needs of galactic civilization. Atmospheric zones maintained perfect conditions for beings who breathed everything from pure oxygen to liquid methane, while gravitational fields adjusted to provide optimal comfort for species ranging from gas giant dwellers to high-gravity world inhabitants. The session had been called under emergency protocols typically reserved for existential threats to galactic stability. Imminent wars, plague outbreaks, or the discovery of hostile alien civilizations. The fact that it was being used to discuss a training exercise at a combat academy represented either unprecedented overreaction or justified panic, depending on one's perspective. Chancellor Tyrell of the Unified Galactic Assembly called the session to order with the kind of weary authority that came from managing crises that defied rational explanation. His opening statement would become one of the most quoted addresses in diplomatic history. "Colleagues, we are gathered here today to address a situation that challenges our fundamental understanding of interspecies relations, military doctrine, and the nature of physical reality itself. 48 hours ago, a routine training exercise at the Galactic Combat Academy resulted in what can only be described as a complete breakdown of everything we thought we knew about human capabilities." The chamber fell silent. Representatives who normally engaged in constant political maneuvering sat motionless, their attention focused entirely on the central display screens, showing frozen images from the Academy's security footage. "The footage you are about to review," Chancellor Tyrell continued, "has been analyzed by military experts from every major civilization in known space. Their conclusions are disturbing. General Krex of the Krillian Empire, whose species had produced Cadet Zeth-9, rose to address the assembly. His statement carried the weight of a civilization that had built its entire identity around military supremacy. "Honorable delegates, the Krillian Empire has conducted warfare for over 3,000 years. We have developed combat techniques that represent the pinnacle of strategic and tactical evolution. Our warriors are trained from birth to embody the perfect synthesis of strength, speed, and tactical intelligence." He paused, allowing the assembly to absorb the implications of what he was about to say. Cadet Zeth-9 represents the absolute peak of Krillian military development. He is genetically optimized, chemically enhanced, and trained in combat methods that have proven superior to every military doctrine we have encountered. His defeat of trained warriors from 16 different species led us to believe that Krillian combat supremacy was unquestionable. General Krex activated the main display, showing the frozen image of Jake Rodriguez in what appeared to be mid-combat with Zeth-9. This human, with no formal training, no genetic enhancement, and no apparent understanding of combat theory, engaged our greatest warrior in what he called a good workout. The engagement lasted 11 minutes and 37 seconds. At the end, our warrior required psychological counseling, while the human asked about cafeteria hours. The assembly stirred with the kind of nervous energy that preceded major paradigm shifts in galactic thinking. "The question before us today," General Krex concluded, is not whether humans represent a military threat. The question is whether we have any understanding of what military threat means. Dr. Senth of the Talaxian Scientific Institute requested permission to present her analysis of the footage. As the galaxy's leading expert on interspecies physiology, her assessment carried considerable weight in determining how the galactic community would respond to the revelations about human capabilities. Honorable delegates, my research team has conducted extensive analysis of the engagement footage. Our findings challenge several fundamental principles of physics, biology, and combat theory. She activated a series of holographic displays showing detailed breakdowns of Jake's movements during the sparring session. The human participant demonstrated physical capabilities that exceed our current understanding of unenhanced biological potential. His reaction times, impact resistance, and energy output suggest either advanced technological augmentation or physiological adaptations that we failed to detect during initial contact protocols. Are you suggesting that humans have been concealing their true capabilities? Asked Ambassador Vex of the Crystalline Confederation. I'm suggesting that our assessment methods may be inadequate for evaluating human physiology. The data indicates that what humans consider normal physical activity operates at levels we classify as enhanced performance. Dr. Senth highlighted specific moments from the footage where Jake's movements appeared to violate basic principles of biomechanics. Note the human's response to impacts that should have caused significant injury. He absorbs force in ways that suggest either advanced energy distribution systems or bone density significantly higher than our initial scans indicated. His recovery time between high-intensity movements suggests cardiovascular efficiency that exceeds most enhanced warrior species. The implications were staggering. If humans possessed natural physical capabilities that rivaled or exceeded enhanced warrior species, then every assumption about galactic military balance required immediate revision. Most concerning, Dr. Senth continued, is the human's apparent psychological response to combat stress. Standard behavioral analysis suggests that he experienced no fear, no pain response, and no fatigue, despite engaging in activity that our models classify as potentially lethal. Representative Korth of the Borth Military Collective, whose species considered violence recreational, requested clarification. Are you indicating that humans are naturally adapted for combat? I'm indicating that humans may be naturally adapted for activities that we classify as combat but which they apparently consider recreational exercise. The distinction was important. A species adapted for warfare was concerning but understandable. A species that treated warfare as casual recreation represented a completely different category of threat. Chancellor Thyrell called for a brief recess to allow delegates to process the implications. When the session resumed, the tone had shifted from academic analysis to crisis management. The emergency session's second phase focused on immediate practical concerns. If humans possessed capabilities that exceeded previous assessments, existing diplomatic and military protocols required immediate revision. Ambassador Lix of the Sithrani Collective raised the question that every delegate was considering. Given these revelations about human capabilities, should we consider reclassifying their species status within the galactic community? The question carried enormous implications. Species classification determined everything from trade privileges to military alliance eligibility. Humans had been admitted to the galactic community as a developing civilization with limited military potential. The footage from the Academy suggested that classification might be catastrophically inaccurate. The immediate concern, noted General Krex, is that if one untrained human can engage our most elite warrior as recreational exercise, what capabilities do their actual military forces possess? The question hung in the air like a threat. Earth's military had been assessed as competent but unremarkable during initial contact protocols. If those assessments were wrong, by the same magnitude suggested by Jake's performance, then human military capability might exceed anything in known space. We need to consider the possibility, said Dr. Senth, that humans have been presenting themselves as less capable than they actually are. Deliberate deception? Asked Ambassador Vex. Not necessarily. Our analysis suggests that humans genuinely consider their demonstrated capabilities normal. From their perspective, they may have been providing accurate information about their limitations. The idea that Jake's performance represented normal human capability rather than exceptional ability was more disturbing than deliberate military deception. Deception could be countered through intelligence operations and diplomatic pressure. If every human possessed similar potential, traditional military doctrine became obsolete. The session's final phase addressed immediate response protocols. How should the galactic community proceed given the fundamental uncertainty about human capabilities? Chancellor Tyrell outlined the options: immediate military assessment of human forces, diplomatic renegotiation of Earth status within the galactic community, or comprehensive revision of interspecially interaction protocols. "I propose," said General Krex, "that we implement immediate safety protocols for any facility hosting human personnel." The suggestion sparked debate about whether such protocols would be interpreted as discriminatory or simply prudent given the demonstrated risks. The footage shows that the human participant had no awareness that his actions were causing distress to his opponent, noted Dr. Senth. This suggests that safety protocols should focus on education rather than restriction. After 6 hours of debate, the Galactic Council reached a consensus that satisfied no one but addressed immediate concerns. Earth would be invited to provide detailed information about human physical capabilities and training methods. In exchange, the galactic community would develop new interaction protocols designed to prevent accidental diplomatic incidents caused by misunderstanding human recreational activities. Jake Rodriguez's casual request for refreshments after an 11-minute sparring session with the galaxy's most dangerous warrior had inadvertently triggered the largest diplomatic crisis in recent galactic history. 3 months later, Jake was invited to address the Galactic Council directly to provide clarification about human capabilities and intentions. His appearance before the assembly would become known as the Gym Etiquette Speech, a 30-minute presentation that caused 2 ambassadors to faint, one to request political asylum, and several military leaders to submit immediate resignations. "So, I've been hearing that everyone's pretty worried about what happened at the Academy," Jake began, addressing 47 species representatives with the same casual confidence he'd shown before engaging Zeph-9 in combat. "I wanted to clear up some misunderstandings about human fitness culture and explain why the whole thing got blown out of proportion." Ambassador Tiss of the Talaxian Federation raised her hand. "Mr. Rodriguez, our analysis suggests that your physical performance exceeded the capabilities of enhanced warrior species. Could you explain how this is possible?" "Oh, that. Yeah, I work out pretty regularly. Most humans do. It's kind of a normal thing back home." The assembly fell silent as delegates processed the implications. If regular exercise produced capabilities that exceeded their elite warriors, what did human athletic training accomplish? "When you say work out," asked General Krex, "what specific activities does this involve?" "You know, basic stuff. Lifting weights, running, maybe some martial arts classes at the local gym. Nothing special." Dr. Senth activated her recording equipment. "Could you describe a typical workout routine?" "Sure. I usually start with a warm-up, maybe 20 minutes of cardio. Then I'll do some strength training, work different muscle groups on different days. Might finish with some sparring if there's anyone around who wants to practice." "And this is normal for your species?" "Pretty normal, yeah. I mean, some people are more into fitness than others, but most folks try to stay in shape. It's just healthy living." Ambassador Vex of the Crystalline Confederation requested clarification. "Mr. Rodriguez, when you engaged in sparring with Cadet Zeph-9, were you employing maximum effort?" Jake laughed. "Max effort? No way. That would have been dangerous. We were just having fun, working on technique." The statement caused visible distress among several delegates. If Jake's performance represented casual effort rather than maximum capability, the implications for human military potential were terrifying. "What would maximum effort look like?" asked General Krex, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "Well, you'd need proper safety equipment, medical supervision, maybe some kind of controlled environment. You don't want to hurt anybody. But theoretically, what capabilities would be demonstrated?" Jake considered the question with the seriousness of someone explaining recreational activities to confused aliens. "I guess you'd see the difference between recreational sparring and actual competitive fighting, like the difference between playing catch and professional athletics." The analogy was lost on species that didn't engage in recreational activities involving physical contact, but the implication was clear. Jake's performance represented the casual end of human physical capability rather than the peak. "Mr. Rodriguez," said Chancellor Tyrell, Would it be possible for Earth to provide detailed information about human athletic and military training methods? Sure, no problem. Though I should mention that military training is pretty different from civilian fitness. Military folks are way more serious about this stuff. 2 ambassadors immediately requested medical attention. One delegate from a particularly peaceful species submitted a formal request for political asylum on the grounds that his homeworld was too close to Earth for comfort. The thing is, Jake continued, apparently unaware of the diplomatic crisis he was causing. We're really not trying to intimidate anybody. Back home, physical fitness is just part of staying healthy, like eating vegetables or getting enough sleep. Dr. Senth raised her hand. Mr. Rodriguez, are you indicating that combat capability is a side effect of normal human health maintenance? Combat capability is a strong term. I'd say it's more like general physical competence. You know, being able to handle yourself if something goes wrong. The distinction between combat capability and general physical competence would spawn years of academic debate and require extensive revision of galactic military doctrine. As a direct result of Jake's presentation, the Galactic Council implemented universal safety protocols for facilities hosting human personnel. The protocols were officially titled Interspecies Physical Activity Guidelines, but were universally known as the Rodriguez Rules. The key provisions required that humans check with medical staff before engaging in any physical activity, that appropriate safety equipment be provided for anyone interacting with humans during recreational activities, and that detailed warnings be posted about the potential for accidental injury during what humans considered normal social interaction. The warnings, posted in 47 languages at every facility in galactic space, read, "Humans, please check with medical staff before any physical activity. What you consider recreational exercise may exceed safety parameters for other species." But by then, it was already too late. The footage of Jake's sparring session had been studied by every military academy, analyzed by every intelligence service, and discussed by every government in known space. The 11 minutes and 37 seconds of recreational exercise had fundamentally altered how the galaxy viewed humanity. Military strategists realized that their assessments of human capability had been off by orders of magnitude. Diplomatic corps scrambled to renegotiate treaties based on accurate understanding of human potential. Intelligence services revised their threat assessments to account for the possibility that every human civilian possessed military-grade capability. Most significantly, the revelation that humans considered such capabilities normal rather than exceptional changed the galactic community's entire approach to Earth relations. Humanity wasn't hiding advanced military technology or concealing aggressive intentions. They were simply a species whose idea of recreational activities exceeded most civilizations' military capabilities. The final report from the Galactic Council's investigation concluded with a statement that would influence interspecies relations for generations. Humans represent a fundamental paradigm shift in our understanding of biological capability. They are not intentionally threatening, but their normal physical activities operate at levels that we classify as enhanced military performance. Recommend extreme caution in any situation involving human recreational activities. The report's appendix included a note that Jake Rodriguez had been invited to return to the academy as a guest instructor, teaching courses on human recreational safety protocols and cross-species fitness awareness. His first lesson was titled, "How Not to Accidentally Hospitalize Your Workout Partner." Enrollment required medical clearance and psychological preparation, but by then, it was already too late. Every species in the galaxy had seen what 7 seconds of human sparring could do.